Looks like the auditor report reveals systemic failure. Oh, boy. Misplaced priorities at DCYF. Senator, what have you found?
Well, I didn't find it. I'm just talking about what the auditor found, and frankly, good for them. But it's really bad news. They found that, our agency, one of our agencies, Department of Children, Youth, and Families, they audit a very small portion of the payments they make. They make thousands of payments every year, and found alarming problems with overpayment, both in the quantity of overpayment and the amount of money. I mean, just put it in perspective. They audited $10 million. Now, this is an agency that spends billions of dollars, but auditing $10 billion found over $2 million in overpayments. If you extrapolate that out, that could be hundreds of millions of dollars in overpayments.
Yeah, no, the payments come both from the federal government, and the state of Washington kicks in as well. I think the federal government kicks in about $236 million or something, and then the state of Washington supplements that as well. And I tried to find out the total amount that Washington kicks in, and I Washington State, and I didn't get the exact number. But there are, we know that this has been happening in Minneapolis. We know that Ohio is also being caught up in this fraud. So what actions are taken now after they find just a small percentage of systemic failure?
Well, sadly, it's not clear to me yet that they're taking any actions. Their immediate response was, hey, we need more money so that we can do a better job of auditing ourselves, which is absolutely insane. This is an agency that has grown by hundreds of employees over the last few years. It's got an administrative group that's over 500 people. It's got a government affairs group that's 22 people, and yet they can only seem to afford 6 people to audit their books. That just seems like wrong priorities. And the idea that we should send them more money to audit themselves because they're doing such a poor job is maddening, I would say.
When you hear from your constituents, you're walking through the supermarket or on Sunday or something, do they say to you, John, like, come on, get the act together there? We hear from the governor, we hear from all the rest on the other side of the aisle. We desperately need more money. We've got to have more money. We've got to fill this gap. We've done everything we possibly can, and we just need more of your money, so we're going to come up with an illegal income tax. Do you sense that sort of that the fever of the constituent is reaching a point where they are beside themselves?
Yeah, I don't sense it. I can tell you it's absolutely true. As I talk to folks around my district and around the state, there's this deep frustration, but I would call it more than that. I don't almost call it anger. I mean, these are folks who, get up every day, they go to work, they provide for their families, they support their community, and then they look around me and they're like, am I the fool? Because other people are just taking advantage of the system and getting free money. And it's deeply frustrating, maddening to people who are just trying to do the right thing, and they see people not following the rules and getting a free pass.
Yeah, as my dad always used to say, do people do what you inspect or what you expect? What do you think the answer is, Senator?
Well, I think you got to, I think there's some truth to both, but I don't think you get one without the other is the bottom line.
Right.
If you don't hold folks accountable, you're not going to get what you expect. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I'm going to play for you a couple of cuts. This is State Senator, State Rep Laura Jenkins when she was being asked by Carlene Johnson, a reporter, about the fact that Carlene was going and knocking on doors of some of these daycare centers.
I think, Carlene, what my point is you may have the right to do that. It's not right to do that. We have systems in Washington State that people should report fraud to. At the same time that all of this is going on, we have people being scooped up off of the street.
Okay, now we go to ICE, right? Okay.
We have a former speaker in Minnesota who opened the door to what she thought was a law enforcement agent.
Okay, the rest is garbage. When asked, as Carlene Johnson said, I'm knocking at these doors and there's no one there. There's no sign. There's no evidence that there's any kids there, but yet they're getting thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. I'll play another cut for you. Senator, this is from Como News Investigator. This is Chris Daniels, both Representative Jenkins and Governor Ferguson, if they would support an independent audit.
Would you support an outside audit? And if the answer is no, why not?
And as you know, Chris, take fraud pretty seriously. We literally send someone to each child care provider in person every single year, at least one time a year. That happens every year in our state to every single provider.
These suggestions about fraud with really no basis yet. Last year, they did 29,000 consumer audits. They did 1,400 provider audits, finding no widespread abuse. Now, you can ask the state auditor to go ahead and check on that, but to cavalierly suggest that there is some kind of fraud going on when we have been doing that kind of work, I think is unfair to child care providers.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I wonder if State Representative Laura Jenkins would change her tune now with the evidence that has just come out from this very, very small audit. So what's the next step for you, Senator? What do you do after you find this?
Yeah, so one thing I want to, before I jump into that, I want to say, look, the speaker's being dishonest there. We have had insider reports from the agency about potential for fraud for years. The idea that there are no credible reports of their fraud is just disingenuous, is the nicest way to say it. But she's being dishonest. And to your question, the next step is exactly what we're doing right here, to make it more public and make people realize that it's not just an idea of a problem. We actually have an audit now. It demands more action, because unless we get more public pressure on this, the speaker, the governor, everybody in the Democratic Party that's running our state, they're going to look the other way. They don't want to deal with this. They'd rather, wave their hands and try and blame it on the federal government, when in fact this is entirely a state government failure to keep track of the money they spend. Does at a certain point, enough smoke come up that the folks in Washington, D.C. that are writing the checks primarily, the $236 million or something close to that, do they eventually come in and go, wait a minute, that's federal dollars and you're being irresponsible with those dollars. We are coming in to investigate. It's only a matter of time. I mean, this is clear, and they have a responsibility. They have their own set of budget challenges in D.C., right? So it's not crazy partisan for them to be concerned that money is being wasted, that they're sending a check for. So yeah, it's just a matter of time until they weigh in and say, look, Washington State, explain yourself. In fact, they have started to do that in some areas. I think this will push that even further. Right. They've gone into Minnesota. Apparently, they're going to go into Ohio as well, because that's federal dollars. And if you're not treating them with the respect that you're supposed to be treating them with, then they want to know where it's going. In this case, in the state of Washington, I guess they're next in line. And we'll hear people on the left side of the aisle, oh, well, this is Trump administration coming in here and trying to intimidate, good, hardworking Somali immigrants or whoever it is that happens to be running these daycare centers. I always get the impression. I remember when I served for on the city council in Sammamish, and I remember one time we had a money that came before us, and I voted no on it. And one of the council members said to me, "What do you care? It's federal dollars." We all pay for that. I mean, of course we should care. I mean, we should all care. That's just you couldn't be further off base. I know. This is the crazy thing that the speaker and others have said. They're like, oh, no, all of a sudden they're going to cut back on federal dollars, where that money comes from our own taxpayers. Why would we not want a program to be well run, whether it's federal or state? Nobody gets up in the morning and said, oh, it's okay to have a poorly run government program. Well, apparently some folks in the Democratic majority think that, but they shouldn't. And normal people don't think that. Yeah. We had Travis Couture on, Representative Couture, on the other day, and I asked him, I said, what happened to your suggestion? You had presented a budget, and I'm sure you saw it as well, Senator. I think he said $4.3 billion, I think it was, that he said I could present a budget, and then these cuts would go in place, and we wouldn't have to increase any taxes. And I said, what happened to that thing? I mean, if you could present something and say, look, here's a bunch of money-saving cuts. We still provide the services, the essential services, but there's a whole bunch of fat all over this bone, and let's take a good look at it. Does that type of talk, is that just dead on arrival there in Olympia? Well, they tend to dismiss it. I mean, both the Senate put out what we call the Save Washington budget last year, so you wouldn't have to raise this taxes like they did a year ago. Travis had a framework for a budget this year that did essentially the same thing. And Here's the thing. Yeah, they downplay it. They undermine it. They look the other way. And then eventually when they, can't raise taxes enough, they eventually come back and they take a few ideas, but not until they, look the other way and they raise taxes as a first result. I mean, they have this tax first strategy. Every problem in their view can be fixed by more taxes and more money. And their first response is never better government. And that's where they should be focused. There's so much opportunity to save money in state government, still deliver the services that are needed by the state. We're not arguing that we don't have a role to provide services. We're just arguing that you ought to do it in a way that's cost effective, that actually meets the needs of the citizens and doesn't drive our economy into the dumper.
Yeah. I got to tell you, every time I hear somebody use the word investment, I throw up in my mouth. It's not an investment. You have to understand how economics works. Let's talk a little bit out into the future and get some predictions here, and I won't hold you to it. Travis said that he said because of this tax increase, this income tax, he said, I think there'll be three reactions to it. And the one I want to speak to specifically, he said, at this is the breaking point. And now the voters will be far more respectful of their money, and they will start to put candidates in place that don't vote for unconstitutional actions like this income tax. Do you think in a couple of years you'll have more friends that see the world the same way you do?
I do think that's going to happen. I'm always cautious to dictate the timeline. I wake up every day positive. We're going to get Washington back on track, just maybe not on my schedule, because they can't do otherwise. People can no longer afford to live here in the state of Washington. They are deeply frustrated. I think we've done a good job of providing alternatives to the path that Democrats have taken over the last many years. And I think eventually people are going to wake up and say, no more. We want to protect the future of our state for ourselves and our children and our communities. So, yeah, I remain optimistic. I am also always a little cautious on the timeline, but whether it's this year or in the next couple of years, it's going to happen. It's got to happen.
Senator Braun, how do you stay optimistic?
Well, you can't be in this business without being optimistic. And I think it's more hope than optimistic. I think hope's a good feature. And I just believe in human nature, and I believe humans get things wrong sometimes, but I think collectively there's a wisdom in the voters when they take the time to understand. And I see that as our job is to help them understand what's happening in our state and why it's happening. And if we do a good job of that, they're going to make good decisions long term. So
what actions will be taken regarding the audit? Will you ask for an expanded audit? Will we pull more than just 2% or 3% or the number that they looked at? Will you hear in response to that, well, we don't have the money for those audits. We need more money for the audits. What concrete steps will be taken to address what appears to be fraud?
Yeah, you're going to see a few different things from Republicans. You're going to see a demand that they make the adjustments. They put more auditors in place. They have the funding to do it. They have the flexibility to do that. If they don't do so, that's just looking the other way in the face of obvious misuse of money. The second thing you're going to see is demand by not just in this agency, but executive branch wide, that they be more public about what actions they're taking to combat fraud. Look, I think I've said this before. In many cases, we have what I call credible evidence of fraud, but we may not have proof yet. It demands investigation, and it demands investigation whether it's real or not. If it's real, there should be consequences. If it's not real, the public deserves to know, because there's just enormous loss of trust in state government. You don't get that trust back by just wishing it back. You get it back by actually going and doing the work and showing it publicly so people can understand, regardless of the outcome of the investigation.
Right.
So I think that's where you're going to see us push. One, more action immediately by the agency, and two, more transparent work broadly within the executive branch.
Yeah, I get the sense, and I feel this way. I don't mind paying the taxes. I'll pay it for the services. But the point that really boils the blood is when you hear about these stories and you think, well, they're just taking more of my money and people are stealing it. I mean, stealing it from me. And that's the point where you say, well, then something has to be done. So hopefully something will be done. Senator John Braun, thank you for spending some time with us. Certainly appreciate it.